Phil Rucker, you guys have had an extraordinary body of reporting on this moment in the Trump presidency in the Post this weekend, and I want to dig deeper into some of them, but I want to start with this outbreak in the vice president's office. Why isn't the vice president quarantining the way any of the four of us would be expected to do if someone as close as his chief of staff or his body man, you can explain what a body man is, tested positive?
Yeah, so Nicole, as of now, there are at least 5 members of Pence's close circle, who have tested positive for the coronavirus, including his chief of staff, his top political advisor, his personal aide, known as a body man. That is somebody who literally spends all day at the vice president's side, accompanying him wherever he goes, also among the infected. The vice president's spokesman explained over the weekend that both Pence and his wife, Karen Pence, have tested negative on Saturday, again on Sunday, again negative today on Monday, and in consultation with White House doctors, is going to be continuing his travel schedule. They have cited a carve-out in CDC guidelines for people who are considered essential workers. However, there's a great deal of question about whether campaigning for a political election is considered essential work. That's a term normally applied to doctors, nurses, firefighters, the sort of people we traditionally think of as essential workers. Furthermore, the CDC says if you are an essential worker who may have had risk of exposure to the coronavirus, you should be wearing a mask at all times, and you should be socially distanced whenever possible. Those are things we have not seen the vice president do. There is virtually no social distancing at the White House or aboard the president or the vice president's plane. We very rarely see the vice president wear a mask, same with his staff, same with the president, same with other West Wing officials. And so we'll have to see how this continues. But he, according to our reporting, has been determined to keep up his campaign schedule, partly as a show of strength, partly because the election is near. And you got to assume it's also partly because he knows what the president, what Donald Trump would think if he were to stay at home because of fears of getting sick.
Well, Phil, I don't think anyone minds if Vice President Pence works to procure tests for states that are surging or procure PPE for hospitals in need. But why does he have to hold thousands of people at rallies? Tom Bossert, who once worked for Pence and Trump, said this about the rallies. Given the new case totals in the U.S., if you have a gathering of 1,000 people or more, the odds are almost 100% that at least one person in attendance is infectious. So when Pence looks out at whomever shows up to greet him, wherever he is, most of the places where they're going, most of the battleground states are experiencing surges. According to his own former Homeland Security advisor, there are COVID positive people out there. Why not? I mean, in this, Mr. Short seems like a more intelligent person than some of the other folks in this lot. Do they not feel any shame or guilt about potentially exposing the people who fly Air Force Two, or the people who bring them food on these planes, or the volunteers who drive motorcades in these states, or the people who go to their... They don't feel any obligation to protect any of those people from their COVID infections?
They evidently don't, Nicole, think that that's enough to change his schedule of campaigning. He's determined to stay out there and campaigning. It's worth pointing out, because you brought him up, Mark Short, the vice president's chief of staff, along with Mark Meadows, the White House chief of staff, have long been two of the most skeptical officials inside the administration when it comes to coronavirus restrictions. They've been advocating for the country to open up fully for some time, and they've been quite derisive privately in internal discussions in the White House about some of the restrictions in the CDC guidelines.
I wish him a speedy recovery, but I think that's an incredibly reckless mindset. I want to ask you, Dr. Roy, to take us through what exactly is going on in this country. I mean, how did we, and for anyone that was blissfully checked out or picking apples or carving pumpkins over the weekend, this country broke records and not good ones over the weekend for new cases. What's going on in this country right now, and why?
Nicole, it's good to see you. It's not going well, to be really honest. Every state is moving in the wrong direction. Here in New York, Nicole, I oversee medical services in COVID isolation and quarantine sites. At New York City and New York State is working aggressively to contain the virus. This is unfortunately not happening in every state in this country, which is why you're seeing a rise in cases and hospitalizations, and sadly, to be followed by deaths. to follow up on a tweet that you showed about by the president indicating that on November 4th, this is suddenly all going to go away, implying or suggesting it yet again that the doctors and the medical community are somehow making this a bigger deal than it really is. That's another example of where the current administration is really, for some reason, forging an attack on the medical community. I just invite the president and the vice president and all of their enablers to come visit any one of our hospitals and meet with the nurses and respiratory therapists and ICU doctors who are intubating patients, who are providing medications to sustain the lives of people who are infected with COVID-19. That's the reality, Nicole.
You know, Claire, I don't mean to single out Mr. Short, but having once been a senior White House staffer, my disgust knows no boundaries. When you're a senior staffer, you have two responsibilities. One, to not become the story, and two, to help your boss help themselves. I think I quoted Jerry Maguire a couple weeks ago, and it's help me help you. His job was to help Pence help the American people get better. And now that he's a walking petri dish, potentially spreading coronavirus to people that may not be as safe and young and virile as they all think they are now weapons. They have weaponized themselves as super spreaders of this disease again. And I guess I don't know any way to process their recklessness. What do you make of this mindset that they've now taken public 8 days before Election Day?
Well, it's really weird politically, because if you think about this, first of all,
That's a good point.
I mean, he was head of the coronavirus task force. So first, we know they tried to hide the fact that 5 people, including his body man, who's with him all the time, and his chief of staff tested positive. Then he wants to tell people that him going to large rallies is essential. And that's crazy on 3 or 4 different levels. And the weird thing is the voters he needs are college-educated suburban women and older voters. So they're looking at this going, what? You were just exposed? You found out today and you're getting in a plane and coming down and having a lot of people gather close together? I mean, every single one of these rallies is a campaign poster for Joe Biden.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.